The summer of 1998 had a quiet kind of heaviness in Ashbrook. The air was thick with pollen, old memories, and the kind of silence that pressed against windows after dark. That Sunday, 17-year-old Emily Hart woke up before dawn. She'd barely slept. Her journal lay open beside her pillow, a few words scribbled in frustration. I just need to breathe. I don't know who I am anymore. By 4:12 p.m., she told her mum she was going out for a drive to clear her head. That wasn't unusual. Emily did that often. She liked to be alone with music and road noise. It was her therapy, her escape. Her mother, Rachel, barely looked up from folding laundry. Okay, honey, be back before sunset, she mumbled, thinking more about the roast in the oven than what Emily might be running from. Emily stepped into the June heat and slipped behind the wheel of her Buick. Skylark green beat-up, hers. She wore a lilac tank top and frayed denim shorts, a feather earring in one ear, a silver hoop in the other. Her mismatched earrings were a quiet rebellion she never explained. Maybe she liked imbalance. Maybe she was just tired of pretending everything fit. The car's engine coughed to life. Music flooded the interior. A static-laced 90s station, one she loved. She drove out of Ashbrook, past the wheat fields and old rail tracks, toward nothing in particular. At 5:03 p.m., her car pulled into a Sunoco station 30 miles away. A CCTV camera caught the Buick under the pumps. Emily got out, pumped gas, and walked inside for a cherry soda. The clerk, Donnie Board, high school age, remembered her because of the feather earring. She looked kinda spaced out, he would later say. Not scared, just not really here. By 5:11, she was back behind the wheel, and that was it. No phone calls, no texts, no bank activity. Her car disappeared down Route 6 and never came back. There was a security camera positioned above the ice machine. It caught one last shot, Emily, sitting in the driver's seat, one hand on the steering wheel, the other drumming along to the beat of a song. She looked happy, wide smile, wind in her hair. The audio didn't survive, but her brother would later recognize the movement of her lips, torn by Natalie Imbruglia. Rachel was unloading dishes when she heard the front door shut. You're not running off to Liam's, are you? She called over her shoulder, still not looking up. God, Mum, no. I just want the wind and no boys. Well, don't go too far. Your father said the Buick's been rattling again. Everything rattles, Mum, even me. By 10 p.m., dinner was cold and uneaten. Rachel had called Liam, then Noah, then the police. There was no sign of Emily. That night, Ashbrook's stillness broke like glass. Patrol cars cruised empty roads. Helicopters lit up the forest edge. Divers scoured the lake where teens partied. No skid marks, no shoes, no signs of a struggle, nothing. It was as if she'd driven off the face of the earth, the missing person. Report came fast. Emily Rose Hart, 17, 5 feet 5, 118 pounds, green Buick Skylark. Last seen wearing lilac tank top and denim shorts. Destination, unknown by dawn. Her photo was everywhere in convenience stores, taped to gas pumps, tucked under windshield wipers. Some said she ran away. Others whispered darker things. The gas station footage became the last proof of life. The final frame showed her fading down Route 6, a blur in the distance, swallowed by dusk and trees in her bedroom. Everything was untouched, the bed still messy, a half-read poetry book open on the nightstand, a candle she hadn't blown out all the way, and under her pillow, a postcard addressed to her best friend Casey. One day, I'll drive until I'm free, until the map disappears. Rachel kept her daughter's room the same, not out of hope, but out of fear. Changing it would mean accepting she wasn't coming back. Her father grew quieter. Her brother Noah left for college and never moved home. Something in the family snapped and stayed broken. Every June, Rachel placed fresh daisies under the old stop sign at the edge of town, the last place Emily's Buick was spotted. She never said a word. She'd just stand there, eyes on the horizon, like she was listening for tires on gravel. 10 years passed like fog. And then On a freezing January morning in 2008, a hunter's voice crackled through a ranger's walkie-talkie, 200 miles from Ashbrook, found a car, overgrown, no plates. The call about the found car hadn't reached Ashbrook yet. In 1998, though, the town had already begun to rot under the weight of Emily's disappearance. For the first 3 days, no one dared say the word dead. People still left porch lights on, still baked casseroles for the Harts, still hoped. But by day 5, the whispers had started, and by day 9, hope had curdled into suspicion. The first name everyone muttered was Liam Rourke. He and Emily had been on again since sophomore year. He was the boy who smoked behind the hardware store, who knew how to hotwire a Chevy and could fix a carburetor with 2 fingers and a shoelace. A mechanic's son, greasy-fingered and wolf-eyed, with a temper that teachers liked to pretend was passion. But the cops didn't care about passion. They cared that Liam was the last one to kiss her goodbye. At 19. Liam had already been in 2 fights at Sullivan's Bar and 1 at a county fair. So when Detective Marina Blake walked into his father's garage with a notepad in one hand and a Polaroid of Emily in the other, he didn't flinch. He wiped his hands on his shirt and leaned back against the hood of a '94 Bronco. Like this was all just a misunderstanding. Blake asked him where he was the night Emily disappeared. He said he was at home, alone, fixing up the Buick they'd been rebuilding together before she took off in hers. She didn't tell you where she was going. No, Liam said. We'd been fighting. She said she wanted space. Gave it to her. He paused, blinked, jaw tight. That was the last thing I did right, I guess. His eyes stayed dry, but his voice cracked just once, right before he asked if they'd checked the woods past Route 6. Detective Blake watched him carefully, but she didn't push. Not yet. In the next few days, Liam was brought in again. And again, no alibi, but no physical evidence either. No blood, no bruises, no proof he ever saw her that day. The Buick was gone, and so was the trail. The rumor mill didn't care about proof. At the high school, girls whispered that Emily had been pregnant. At the church, someone claimed she had been seen crying in the confessional. By week 2, an anonymous tip suggested Emily had been secretly seeing someone older. A teacher, maybe. Someone with power. No name was given, just the letter J. Detective Blake hated rumors. She liked facts. She liked pressure, and she especially liked patterns. The Emily Hart case had none. Rachel Hart sat at the kitchen table most nights with a cigarette burning into ash. She didn't smoke, she just liked the smell. Now, Mark, her husband, spent his evenings in the garage pretending to fix things. Shelves, hoses, anything he could take apart without thinking about the daughter he might never see again. They held a vigil on the courthouse lawn. Candles, prayers, a cardboard box full of photos. Rachel didn't cry in public. But that night, when the song from the gas station Torn came on the radio someone had set up at the edge of the lawn, she walked to the nearest trash can and threw her lighter into it, like it had betrayed her. The town, once close-knit, started looking over its shoulder. Every smile felt forced, every locked door a reminder. The woods that kids once played in suddenly felt like gravesites. Emily's name was painted on the sidewalk, near the school in purple chalk. A week later, rain washed it away. Inside the police station, the caseboard grew crowded. Maps, strings, witness notes. None of it moved forward. Blake hated unsolved things. They stuck to her ribs. One night, after another dead-end interview with a trucker who swore he'd seen a girl hitchhiking in a lilac tank top, she sat in her car outside the Hart house, watching the living room window glow pale blue. Rachel was still awake. Always was. Across town, Liam sat alone in his room above the garage, strumming a guitar that had lost 2 strings. He'd kept one of Emily's poems, the one she scribbled on the back of a receipt. He didn't read it anymore, just folded and unfolded it like a habit. "You'll really think I did it?" he asked Blake once, during their 3rd interview. She looked up slowly. "Do you?" His laugh was hollow. "I didn't love her the way she needed, but I didn't kill her." Blake didn't answer. She wrote that line down word for word, in the margins of Emily's diary, the one found a week later in her locker. Beneath a pile of banned flyers was a name no one recognized. Jay says I'm too loud. But silence doesn't feel safe. Either, whoever Jay was, they never came forward. And then, the years dragged. Seasons blurred, Rachel stopped cooking. Mark stopped talking, the posters faded. And Emily became one of those names. The kind people said softly, like the wrong tone might summon something they weren't ready for. But she was never forgotten. And in the winter of 2008, as frost cracked the leaves and silence wrapped itself around Ashbrook again, a phone rang in the cold case unit. A ranger's voice cut through static like a knife. Got a Buick Skylark up here in Kalen Woods. No plates, overgrown, smells like rust and rot. Detective Blake stood completely still, and for the first time, in 10 years, something in the air shifted. The case wasn't cold anymore. The woods in Kellen County had teeth. Roots curled like fists. Pines towered like sentries. When Detective Marina Blake arrived at the edge of the clearing, the cold bit her fingertips, and the air smelled like rust, wet moss, and something else, something older. The Buick was almost skeletal now. Vines had pushed through the undercarriage. Its paint had faded from green to a strange, swampy grey. When she opened the driver's side door with a crowbar, something small and dry fell onto the forest floor. CASSETTE, tape. Back in Ashbrook, Rachel Hart dropped a bowl of cereal when the phone rang. It had been 10 years, and still the sound of a landline splitting through silence made her heart misfire. That night, she stood in the middle of Emily's room, like a ghost, trespassing in someone else's life. Dust swam in the air. The dream catcher still hung from the mirror. Nothing had changed, but something felt off. Rachel swore the closet door was open wider than usual. The lamp was unplugged. And when she sat on the edge of the bed, the feeling hit her like a fever. Someone had been in this room. A week after the Buick was pulled from the woods, Blake returned to Ashbrook with a small cardboard box labeled Recovered Personal Effects. She placed it gently on the Hart's kitchen table, like it was a bomb no one wanted to defuse. Inside were 2 cassette tapes, a journal with a cracked spine, and the feather earring Emily wore the day she vanished. Rachel refused to touch the box. So Blake took it to the station and started with the tapes. The first was just music, a mixtape, fuzzy vocals, muffled drums. Songs Emily had probably played on loop during long drives. But the second, that one was different. Emily's voice crackled through static. Sunday, June 14th. 1:23 a.m. I can't sleep. He called again. I didn't answer. I feel like I'm being watched, even in the dark. Mum thinks I'm dramatic. But I hear things when it's quiet, breathing, scratching. Jay says I overthink, but my skin feels wrong when he's around. Like my body knows before my brain does. Blake paused the tape and wrote one word on her pad. Predator. Rachel, finally, opened the journal a day later. It was chaos, torn corners, ink smudges, entire entries scribbled out so violently the paper tore. But some pages were intact. One had a list titled, How to Disappear Without Dying. Empty savings change name never. Go back tell. Only one person if necessary another. Page read. I don't trust Jay, but I'm addicted to the way he looks at me when I lie. It's like he sees the version of me I'm not supposed to be. Rachel stared at that line for a long time. She called her son. Noah answered on the second ring. Mum, I need you to come home. Noah hadn't stepped foot in Ashbrook in nearly 7 years. He returned that same week. Taller, leaner, hair longer than Rachel remembered. But the way he clutched his backpack told her he was still the same boy who used to sneak into Emily's room to trade books. He sat at the kitchen table flipping through the journal, his brow furrowing. She never told me about anyone named Jay, he said. She talked about Liam, about leaving town, but this, this is new. Rachel looked up sharply. Could Jay be Jason Wyatt? Noah froze. Mr. Wyatt, her counselor. Rachel didn't answer. She didn't need to. Detective Blake had already begun pulling Wyatt's employment file. He'd left Ashbrook High in late '98, citing family illness. No forwarding address. No resignation letter. Just gone. And then there was the voicemail. Found saved on the Hart's old answering machine. One Blake insisted on searching. It's Jay, don't ignore me. We talked about this. I said I'd handle it if it got too loud. You said you were mine. That meant something. I meant it. His voice was calm, measured, but the edge in it, the entitlement, it chilled Rachel straight through. Handle what? Blake muttered, playing the message again. The next day, while cleaning out old storage boxes, Rachel found something strange. A receipt from a motel 30 miles outside town, dated the same week. Emily vanished. 2 nights, 1 guest. Paid in cash. Written in Emily's handwriting on the back. Jay picked the place. I said I didn't feel safe. He said I'd be safe with him. Rachel called Blake immediately. At the station, Blake pinned the note to her. Board with a red tack. Noah stood beside her, his face pale. Do you think she ran because of him? I think, Blake said. She didn't run fast enough. Later that night, Rachel woke suddenly. The closet door in Emily's room was open again. This time she knew she had closed it. Blake's phone buzzed. Forensics had something from the Buick. Blood. Dried partial, but present, on the inside of the trunk lining. Not enough for a full sample yet, but enough to say it loud. Emily hadn't just vanished. Something happened inside that car, and somewhere. Jay was still listening. The forest in Kellen County didn't give up its secrets easily. It took 10 winters, a dying buck, and a board hunter named Clark Miles to finally crack its silence. Clark had followed the blood trail to far off his usual path. Muttering to himself, as the snow thinned beneath his boots, he nearly missed it. A curved piece of metal half buried under pine needles and thyme. At first, he thought it was part of an old shed. But then he saw the bumper. He called it in, like he was reporting a dead dog. Yeah, I got a car up here. Looks real old. Plates are gone. It's mossy. When officers arrived, they found the vehicle smothered by branches and kudzu, nature pressing down on it like a grave marker. It was a green Buick Skylark, the exact make and model flagged in the Emily Hart file. No doubt, the paint had rotted, under a decade of sun and snow, but the shape was unmistakable. Detective Marina Blake was already on her way before they finished taping the scene. She hadn't touched the case in years, not since it froze in her hands like so many others. But now, with the forest breathing new life into it, she handed it over to someone she trusted. Carla Ruiz didn't look like a typical cold case investigator. She dressed in clean, quiet layers, like someone prepared to stay for hours without saying much. She didn't rush, she didn't speculate. But when she walked around the Buick, fingers gliding over its rusted spine, she whispered, she didn't just drive here. They opened the trunk first. It took effort. Something was wedged against it from the inside, a piece of tarp, balled up and pressed to the corner. Beneath it, they found what looked like a necklace chain, broken at the clasp. It held a single charm, a small silver hummingbird. Carla held it up to the light. The metal was dulled, but there was enough shine to catch her eye. She sealed it in a plastic bag and moved to the glove compartment. Inside, she found a faded driver's license, warped from moisture but still readable. Emily Rose Hart. Beneath that, a red smear along the seam of the passenger seat. Blood. It was dried into the fabric like something had sunk in, bled out, then vanished. No bones, no teeth, no tissue, but enough to say she had been here. Enough to start again. Carla stood quietly outside the vehicle, her breath fogging in the air. Her partner asked if they should call Ashbrook PD. Carla shook her head. Not yet, let's be sure. That night, she sat in her motel room with the evidence laid out on the table. The necklace, the ID, the blood sample, sealed in plastic. She replayed the voicemail from Jade, one pulled from Emily's family answering machine. You said, you were mine. That meant something. I meant it. She listened again. This time, not for the words, but for the sound behind them. Birdsong, not the kind found in Ashbrook. Something else, more distant. More wild. Carla pulled up a map, marked where the Buick was found, drew a 20-mile radius around it. Then she opened a new file. Emily Hart. Case reactivated. The call to Rachel. Hart came at 6:02 the next morning. Rachel answered on the second ring, her voice thin. Yes, it's Carla Ruiz. I work with Detective Blake. We found your daughter's vehicle. The silence was so long, Carla thought the line dropped. Then, is she inside? No, ma'am. Then she's still out there. Carla didn't correct her, didn't say what the blood suggested, didn't say that 10 years and a rusted-out Buick didn't usually end in miracles. Instead, she asked a softer question. Did Emily ever wear a hummingbird necklace? Rachel let out a sharp breath, like she'd been hit. That was mine, she said. She took it the week she left. Later that day, Carla interviewed the hunter. Clark Miles looked like someone who belonged to the forest, his beard frosted with grey, fingers stained with sap. He told her he never saw anyone out there, but sometimes he'd find strange boot prints after fresh snow. Big ones, military-style treads. When Carla asked how long ago that was, he scratched his head. Few years back, couple times, thought it was poachers. She wrote that down. Then she went back to the Buick and checked the trunk again. Tucked beneath the mat, beneath the rust and leaves, she found something most cops would have missed. A candy wrapper wedged so tight in the seam it was almost fossilized. Cherry. Soda-flavored taffy. The same kind, listed on the gas station receipt from the day Emily vanished. It was her car, she had driven it, and something had happened in it. That night, Carla stood under the stars outside the ranger station, phone pressed. To her ear, Blake, she said, "We've got something solid. I'm calling it. This wasn't a runaway." You think she was dumped there? No, Carla said. I think she drove. I think she met someone. I think he followed her. A pause. Is Wyatt still off-grid? As far as we know, Carla looked up at the trees. They didn't move. They didn't bend. They just watched. I think he brought her here, she said, and I think he never left. The news spread fast. By the time Carla Ruiz stepped back into Ashbrook, Liam Rourke already knew. His wife Anna had been the one to show him the headline on her phone, "Missing teen's car found 10 years later." He didn't say anything, just stood at the sink, water running over his hands long after the soap was gone. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did Anna. The next morning, Carla found him waiting outside her rental car. She hadn't even stepped out when he knocked on the window. "I have something to say," he said. She studied him. Older now, slower. The scars from youth were still there, just hidden beneath layers of fatherhood and mortgages. She motioned him into the passenger seat. They drove in silence for 5 minutes before he spoke. I lied. She didn't answer. Let him dig his own grave. That week, before Emily vanished, she told me she was pregnant. Carla blinked, barely hiding her surprise. You never said that in the original interviews. I know. He wiped his palms on his jeans. She made me swear not to tell anyone, not her mum, not Noah, not even Jay. At that name, Carla stiffened. You knew about him. Not really. Just that there was someone older. Someone she'd talk about in pieces, like he was a dream she couldn't wake up from. What did she say about him? She said he made her feel small, like she owed him something for every kindness, like he was always just one step away from being dangerous. And yet, she kept seeing him. She was 17, Liam said. 17-year-old girls think danger is just a kind of deeper love. Carla turned the car onto the road leading to the old school. Trees blurred past the window, just like they had in Emily's last known footage. Were you the father? I don't know. I wanted to be, but I don't think she was sure either. Carla pulled over at the edge of the football field. It was overgrown now. Bleachers half collapsed. The ghosts of games long played hung in the air like fog. Liam turned to face her fully. I didn't kill her. I didn't hurt her. I lied because I thought if I told the truth, it would make me guilty by association. I panicked. I was a stupid kid. Carla reached into her coat and pulled out a photo. The hummingbird necklace recovered from the Buick. Did you give this to her? No. That was her mum's. She wore it when she was anxious, like it anchored her. Carla made a note. Why now? She asked. Why tell me this after 10 years? Because I have daughters, he said. And I'd rather they hate me for who I was than learn I stayed silent when I had the chance to help someone like Emily. A long pause passed between them. Then, Liam leaned forward. You don't think she ran, do you? No, Carla said softly. I think she was trying to escape someone, but she didn't run fast enough. He nodded like that was what he feared she'd say. Then he added something that made Carla's breath hitch. She told me Jay used to leave notes in her locker, but not written, printed, like from a typewriter. She said he didn't want her to recognize his handwriting. Did you ever see one? Liam shook his head. But I remember her showing me one. I remember exactly what it said. He paused, repeating it like a curse he couldn't forget. You don't get to leave without me. Carla sat still, the pieces beginning to slide into place. Not a runaway, not a breakup gone wrong. A trap. It started with a misfiled evidence box in a backroom of the Ashbrook Police Department. Cold case investigator Carla Ruiz was sorting through boxes labeled in faded Sharpie, most of them neglected for years. She wasn't expecting anything useful. Most of the evidence from the 1998 Emily Hart case had been combed over a dozen times, but box number 14 wasn't in the system. No chain of custody. No official log. Just a dusty, unmarked container sitting at the bottom of a metal shelf like it had been hiding. Inside, one mini DV tape, still sealed in a plastic bag. No label, no notes. Carla frowned. Nobody watches tapes anymore, she muttered. She called in a favor from the tech team downstairs, who managed to unearth a still working mini DV player like they were digging up dinosaur bones. 30 minutes later, the tape started rolling. At first, it was nothing. Static, white noise. A few frames of gas pumps, then a time stamp blinked onto the screen. June 14, 1998, 5:06 p.m., the Sunoco station. The same time Emily was last seen. The camera was mounted high, angled slightly down. It caught the gas station lot in wide shot, just as a green Buick Skylark pulled up to pump #3. Emily stepped out. You could see her clearly, tank top, feather, earring, cherry soda in hand. But then, on the edge of the frame, a second vehicle pulled in. Black Toyota Corolla. A man exited from the passenger side, mid-30s, dress shirt tucked into jeans, close-cropped hair, thin frame, sunglasses. He didn't go inside. He went straight to Emily, and she backed away. Not dramatically, not a scream, but a subtle, visible recoil. The kind of step you take when someone knows too much about you. He said something. She shook her head. He grabbed her arm. Carla leaned in closer to the screen. Emily pulled away fast. The soda hit the ground and rolled under the Buick. The man stepped closer. To close, then the frame skipped. A bad cut, static. Went. The image returned. The man was gone. Emily climbed back into her car and drove off. Carla rewound the footage and played it. Again, then again. She paused it at the clearest frame of the man's face, and she knew. Jason Wyatt. The name had floated through the case like a rumor. A high school guidance counselor who left town suddenly after Emily disappeared. Never questioned, never even listed as a person of interest until now. Carla called Marina Blake. You're going to want to see this. Blake didn't speak for a full minute after the tape ended. Then she stood, grabbed her coat, and said only, find him. But Jason Wyatt was already gone. Earlier that morning, Jason had been seen watering his lawn in a suburb outside Eugene, Oregon, over 2,000 miles from Ashbrook. A neighbor said he looked stressed. By sundown, he had vanished. Cell phone off, bank accounts untouched, house empty. Detectives knocked on his door the next morning and found a single folded note on the kitchen counter. Some ghosts. Never forget the path home. It wasn't signed. Inside the guest room closet was a typewriter, an old Royal 10 model. The ink ribbon was new. A page still sat in the carriage. You don't get to leave without me. The same line Emily had once shown Liam, the same font. The same man, Carla, paced the hallway outside the house, arms crossed tight over her chest. He knew we were coming. Blake stood in the kitchen, eyes locked on the message. He didn't run because of guilt, she said. He ran because we finally found proof. They searched the house for hours. No pictures, no keepsakes, not even a toothbrush. It was like Jason Wyatt had been living there in costume, a man playing dead until the past came calling. Back in Ashbrook, Carla reviewed Wyatt's employment file. Hired in '96, terminated in October '98 for failure to report. The exit interview, if there ever was one, was missing. She called the high school secretary, who still worked part-time. He gave off a weird vibe. The woman said, "Too charming. Always helping girls with emotional issues. The kind who knew how to stand just close enough to seem fatherly, but not quite." Carla jotted down notes. Then she asked the question that had been circling her mind all day. "Did he ever teach creative writing?" A pause. "Yes," the woman said. "Just for one semester." The same semester, Emily started keeping her journal. Back at the station, Carla unboxed the journal again, flipping through pages she thought she already knew. Then she noticed it. Subtle indentations on the back of certain pages, as if something had been written on a page above them and removed. She held the paper under a UV lamp. Faint outlines emerged. "Nobody saves me unless I scream loud enough. Jay says I'm not allowed to talk about our weekend. If I disappear, tell someone he had a key." Carla closed the journal and set it down like it might catch fire. Jason Wyatt had been inside that house, inside Emily's room, maybe before she vanished, maybe after. And now he was out there again, somewhere, that evening. Carla and Blake sat in the station's war room, staring at a wall full of photos, notes, receipts, and red thread. "Do you think he killed her?" Carla asked. Blake shook her head. "I don't think he wanted her dead." "What do you think he wanted?" Blake looked at the typewritten message again. "To control how she disappeared." 2 hours later, a ranger in Kalin County called in a fresh report. He'd found boot prints, deep, recent. Leading away from where the Buick had been to a nearby cabin boarded up. Condemned since 2004. The door was open. Inside, on a mattress, covered in leaves and mold, lay a single, folded page. Typed, "You're close, but not close enough." It took 10 years, a news headline, and one too many sleepless nights for Casey Walters to speak. She hadn't set foot in Ashbrook since graduation. She'd dyed her hair, changed cities, and buried her high school memories under a mountain of denial. But when she saw the footage of the Buick on the news, rusted, overgrown, and unmistakably, Emily's something inside her cracked. The next morning, she walked into the Ashbrook Police Department, gripping a letter so tightly the ink had bled into her palms. "I have something," she told the front desk officer. "About Emily Hart." Carla Ruiz met her in a quiet interview room. The walls too white, the silence too loud. Casey sat down, voice already trembling. "I should have come forward earlier. I just... I was scared. And I didn't think anyone would believe me." Carla leaned forward. "We believe you now. Start from the beginning." Casey swallowed hard, eyes misting. "Emily and I were best friends since freshman year. We told each other everything, or at least I thought we did. But around spring of senior year, she started acting, different, jumpy, quiet, paranoid. I thought maybe it was just the stress of graduation or Liam." She paused, shook her head, but it wasn't Liam, it was someone else. Carla waited. Jason Wyatt. The name hung in the room like smoke. Carla didn't flinch. "Tell me what you know." "I didn't know it was him at first. She just referred to him as Jay. She said she liked how he listened, how he made her feel older. He'd give her rides after school, but only when nobody was around. Then she stopped going to lunch. Started skipping classes. Did she ever say he hurt her?" "Not at first. She defended him, said he was the only one who understood her. But then she started saying things like, 'I don't feel like myself anymore,' or 'he gets mad when I talk to other guys.' One night, she came to my house crying, saying she felt like she couldn't breathe. Casey opened her purse and took out the folded paper. She left this with me the week before she vanished. Told me not to read it unless something happened. Carla took the note gently. He says he'll kill himself if I tell, but I can't breathe anymore. I'm scared. All the time, I think he watches my house. I tried to end it, but he says I'm the only thing keeping him alive. I'm not sure how long I can keep choosing him over air. Casey choked on the words. I didn't know what to do. I was 17. I thought maybe it was just drama. That she'd figure it out. Carla exhaled slowly, her mind already spinning. Did she ever say where they met? Where they went? Casey nodded. She mentioned a motel once, off Route 9, said she felt gross afterward. Said he kept asking her to write stories about them. Fiction, he called it. If it's fiction, he told her, no one can say it's real. Carla scribbled it down. She told me. Casey whispered that she wanted out. That she was going to leave town. She asked me if I thought it would be okay if she left a note and just ... disappeared. Did she? I don't know. But the night before she vanished, she hugged me for a really long time. Longer than usual. And she said, whatever happens next, promise me you won't think it's your fault. Casey wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie. I think she knew what? That he wouldn't let her leave. Later that night, Carla sat alone in the evidence room, the note laid out in front of her. She compared the handwriting to Emily's journal, identical. The loops, the uneven lines, the lowercase I with a heart dot over it. This wasn't a lie. She opened her laptop and searched every property Jason Wyatt had ever owned or rented. That's when she found it, an abandoned storage unit in the name of his late uncle, 45 minutes from Kalen Woods. Last payment made, June 1998. The month Emily disappeared, her hands moved before her thoughts caught up. She was already dialing Marina Blake. I think we found where he kept her secrets, Carla said. Or worse, where he kept her. It rained the morning the DNA results came in. Ashbrook was a town that rarely welcomed storms. Gutters overflowed. Streets turned slick, and secrets clung to the pavement like oil. But on this day, the rain felt like punctuation. Like something was ending or beginning. Carla Ruiz stood under the awning outside the station, phone pressed to her ear, as the lab technician delivered the news she already expected but still wasn't ready to hear. It's her, he said. The blood in the trunk, it's Emily Hart. The words fell like glass into her chest, sharp, cold. Final, the volume indicates significant blood loss, not enough to confirm death, but enough to assume serious injury, possibly fatal. Carla closed her eyes. Emily had bled in that trunk. She'd bled, and no one came for her. Inside the station, Marina Blake sat hunched over the desk, flipping through Wyatt's old personnel file. Nothing in it screamed predator. No disciplinary warnings. No parent complaints, just glowing reviews, neatly typed, with generic praise like connects well with students and calming presence. But Carla knew better now. Monsters didn't walk in with horns, they wore polite smiles and held doors open. She dropped the lab report on the desk in front of Blake, confirmed. Blake nodded, jaw tight. Time of bleeding. Likely the same night she vanished. Within a window of 2 to 4 hours post-disappearance, Blake exhaled. So he didn't kill her in the woods. No. She was already hurt when she got there, maybe dying. And the necklace. Carla opened a second envelope and slid a printed photo across the desk. The hummingbird pendant. The one recovered from the Buick. The one Emily wore like armor. It wasn't a one-off gift. A search through Jason Wyatt's college records revealed something else. A restraining order filed in 1995 by a former girlfriend, Eliza Moore. Buried deep in sealed court archives, but Carla found it attached to the restraining order. A description of a silver hummingbird locket, gifted to her 6 months before the complaint, identical in design, down to the curled wing and the crack on the beak. This wasn't just some trinket, Carla said. It was his symbol, his signature. Blake's hands clenched into fists. He marked them. Carla returned to her motel room just after sunset, the air heavy with static. She laid the photos on the table, the trunk bloodstain, the typewritten notes, the necklace. All of it circled Wyatt. She poured herself a glass of water, but didn't drink it. She just stared out the rain-flecked window, her mind assembling like puzzle pieces warped from age. Wyatt hadn't snapped. He'd planned, he'd followed Emily for weeks, maybe months, groomed her, manipulated her into secrecy. Then, when she tried to leave, he reminded her who held the leash. She picked up the voicemail again, his voice cold. Flat. You said you were mine. That meant something. I meant it. Carla played it 3 times. Then she pulled up Eliza Moore's contact info. Eliza had remarried. Lived in Montana now. When she picked up the phone, her voice was wary. Carla introduced herself and asked, gently, about Jason Wyatt. There was a pause. Then Elisa said, You found the hummingbird, didn't you? Carla's throat tightened. Yes, he gave me. The same one, Elisa said. Told me it meant loyalty. That once I wore it, we were connected forever. When I tried to leave, he followed me home. Waited outside my apartment. Called me 27 times in one day. Did he ever hurt? You, not physically, but he didn't need to. He knew how to make me feel like leaving him would make me the villain. Carla's voice dropped. He's done it again. Her name was Emily Hart. Eliza went silent. Then, finally, I knew he would. Back at the station, Blake studied the caseboard. The walls were full now. Photos, dates, notes, printouts. Emily's life mapped out like a crime scene. She turned to Carla. He's unraveling. Carla nodded. No more control. No more silence. She's finally louder than him, but he's not done running. No, Carla said. He's leading us somewhere. Why? Carla looked at the board again, and at the photo of the typewriter page from the cabin. You're close, but not close enough. Because he thinks this is still his story. But for the first time, it WASN single quotes T. Jason Wyatt's life was like a hallway full of locked doors. Carla Ruiz stood in front of one of them now. The Human Resources Office of St. Gabriel's Academy in Vermont, where Wyatt had worked from 1992 to 1995. The headmaster greeted her with polite discomfort. The kind reserved for people who ask questions about things no one wants to remember. We prefer not to discuss former staff who left under informal circumstances, but she had a federal badge and a folder full of uncomfortable facts. Wyatt had been fired from St. Gabriel's for boundary violations. Vague language that said everything and nothing. No criminal record. No internal report. Just a quiet exit, a glowing reference letter, and a suggestion he seek counseling. From there, he moved to a school in Pennsylvania. Same story. Fired within 18 months. A female student's diary had surfaced with references to a teacher who made me feel watched. The school never went public. No charges were filed. Wyatt left town. Again, Ashbrook had been his third chance, his final one. And when Emily Hart disappeared, so did he. Carla sat across from Blake later that evening. The air in the station thick with exhaustion. He's done this before, she said. Different towns, same pattern. Charm, isolation, collapse, then gone. Blake ran a hand through her hair. And we only started seeing the shape of him after 10 years. That's because he's good at disappearing, Carla said. Because he learned early on that the world doesn't ask questions about men like him until it's too late. The next day, a phone call came from Kalin County. A tip, quiet, uncertain, but just enough to make Carla stop cold. The caller was an elderly man named Hank Paulson. He'd worked as a seasonal groundskeeper at Clearwater Ridge Campgrounds in the summer of 1998. He heard about the Emily Hart case on the news, heard about the Buick, and remembered something. There was a guy stayed up there alone for a few weeks in July. Said he was a writer, quiet, kept to himself, paid cash, but I remember his hands, always shaking, and the way he looked over his shoulder like the trees were chasing him. Did you get a name? He said it was James Walters, but that ain't what was on the duffel tag. What was? JW. and the last name started with a W. I remember because I made a joke about it. Did he leave anything behind? The line went quiet. Then, you might want to come take a look at the box. Carla drove straight to Clearwater Ridge, gravel spitting under her tires as she turned onto the overgrown path. The campgrounds had long since shut down, weeds in the fire pits, cabins eaten by moss. But Hank still lived in a trailer nearby, clinging to the past like bark on an old pine. He handed her a box wrapped in faded duct tape. Found it in one of the cabins after he left. Never got around to tossing it. Inside, a mold-stained notebook, a pair of black gloves, and a motel keychain labeled Unit 6. Half Moon Motel. Carla opened the notebook first. It wasn't a journal. It was a manuscript, or the beginning of one. She was a storm in denim. 17. With a laugh that split the air like lightning. She made me feel 20 again. She made me feel needed. But storms don't stay still. They move, they destroy, they disappear. Page after page, it became clearer. This wasn't fiction, it was Jason's version of events. A twisted confession masked as literature, and at the bottom of one page, in all caps, you can't own light, but you can put it out. That night, Carla booked herself a room at the old Half Moon Motel, which somehow still stood, faded pink paint, buzzing neon sign, and all. The clerk didn't ask questions when she asked for Unit 6. Inside. The room smelled like mildew and lost time. She opened the blinds, nothing but trees. She sat on the edge of the bed and read more of the notebook. One line made her stop cold. She asked me to let her go. But letting her go meant I didn't matter. So I drove, and drove, and drove. It matched the mileage. Ashbrook to the woods. 212 miles. Later that night, she walked the perimeter of the motel. Gravel, pine needles, old cigarette butts. Then, something strange. A small metal tag nailed to the underside of the picnic table out back. JW 1998. She photographed it, marked the coordinates, sent the images to Blake. He was here, and he wanted someone to know it. Back at the station, Blake updated the caseboard. Red lines now stretched from Ashbrook to Pennsylvania, to Vermont, to the forest, to the cabin, to the motel. Each place Jason Wyatt had touched was now part of a map, a breadcrumb trail through ruined lives. Carla pinned the motel key to the center of it all. We're not chasing him anymore, she said. We're walking the path he laid out. And where does it lead? Carla looked at the camp photo again, the lake behind the cabins. Still as glass. There's one place we haven't searched. It was never meant to be public. The room was small, windowless, and smelled faintly of old paper and bitter coffee. At the center sat a recorder, its little red light blinking steadily, a witness that never flinched, never looked away. Carla Ruiz had arranged it. She believed that truth, when locked in a room, sometimes cracked open under its own weight. She invited Rachel Hart, Emily's grieving mother, Liam Rourke, Emily's teenage boyfriend, now grown, married, weathered, and Casey Walters, Emily's best friend from high school, silent for a decade, no attorneys, no news cameras, just air thick with what was never said. The tape rolled. Rachel went first, not with anger, but with something deeper, a hollow kind of ache sharpened over years. She didn't ask what happened. She asked why none of them came forward when it mattered. Why no one told her her daughter had been drowning. Liam responded with the stammered guilt of a man who'd grown up under the shadow of a missing girl. He said he was scared. That he thought people would blame him. That he didn't know how to tell anyone she was pregnant. That she'd said she was scared, but not of him, of someone else, someone she called Jay. Rachel's face didn't change. Casey broke down halfway through. Her voice shook as she admitted the truth, the one she'd buried under silence and denial for 10 long years. Emily had planned to run. They'd arranged it together. Bus tickets. A packed bag hidden behind Casey's couch. A meeting spot, but Emily never arrived, and Casey never told anyone what she'd seen. Jason Wyatt, black Corolla parked 2 blocks away from the station, idling, waiting, watching. She thought maybe Emily had gotten scared, or changed her mind. But deep down, she knew. The room held its breath. Carla didn't interrupt. She let the silence hang. Let the guilt settle. Rachel reached into her purse and pulled out something that shook even the tape's steady rhythm. A crumpled piece of paper, unfolded with trembling hands. It was a letter. Emily had written it weeks before she vanished. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but it spoke to her mother. She wrote about suffocation, about feeling small, about a man who called fear love, about wanting to be free, about not wanting to disappear, and yet already feeling like she had. The words hit like rain on dry earth. In the final lines, she hoped someone would find her, hoped she'd find her way home. When the recording ended, the room didn't move because something sacred had happened there. Not justice, not exactly, but a resurrection. Not of the girl herself, but of the weight she carried. And the voices who finally dared to name it. That interview never aired, but it changed everything, because now there was a timeline, a plan, a witness, and a man who had thought he erased his trail, only to learn Emily Hart had left echoes. The pines were darker than they should have been. Carla Ruiz stepped carefully over the damp brush, the late afternoon sun barely breaking through the tree canopy. They were back in the Kellen Woods, near the abandoned cabin, just downhill from the Half Moon Motel, and not far from Clearwater Ridge. This stretch of forest had once felt like background noise. Now it felt like something was holding its breath. The ranger's tip had led them here. A depression in the earth. A circle of disturbed soil the size of a twin mattress. Pine needles scattered in awkward clumps, like someone had tried to make it look natural and failed. They dug for 6 hours, then the shovel struck bone dot by dusk. A perimeter had been marked and lights strung up between trees. A forensic team knelt at the edge of the pit, carefully brushing away decades of dirt and moss. Blake crouched next to Carla, glancing at the fragments inside the grave. Femur, partial jaw, what looks like a rib. No full skeleton. Carla said, frowning. Animals, maybe. Or he moved the rest. Carla's gaze fell on something half submerged in the soil. She stepped closer, reaching down with gloved fingers. It was tarnished silver, oval-shaped, a locket. She cracked it open inside. The hummingbird was etched into the left half, its wing chipped, same as before. On the right, a tiny photo, Emily, at age 15, hair wild, grinning into the sun. Carla felt her throat tighten. Blake looked over. "You okay?" "No," she said. "But I know who did this." The following morning, the team convened at the station. The grave contents were logged and bagged, sent to the lab under rush order, though the bones were too degraded for immediate confirmation. DNA from the marrow was promising. Carla didn't need the test to know. The locket was the signature. Jason's signature. Wyatt buried her close, Carla said. He didn't want her far from where he could visit. This was never about disposal. This was about ownership. Blake nodded slowly. It was his final act of control, and now, they had enough dot between the gas station footage, the blood in the trunk, the typed threats, the notebook, Casey's confession, and now, a shallow grave with the victim's personal effects. It was time. They issued a federal warrant for Jason Wyatt's arrest, but Wyatt was already a ghost. He'd left behind no digital trail, no cards, no licenses, no leases, only post office boxes and a dead cell phone number from 2004. It took an entire week of quiet. Desperation before Carla's gut told her where to look. She called an old FBI contact specializing in remote region identity fraud. "Try Alaska," she said. "If you wanted to disappear, really disappear, that's where you'd go." The agent laughed bitterly. "You'd be shocked how many monsters move north." It was a town called Fort Damaris. Population 632. Blink and you'd miss it. Man named Greg Walters had been living there for 8 years, working odd jobs, mostly at the docks. Quiet, never married. No record. Paid everything in cash. When the local PD sent a photo, Carla didn't even need to zoom in. Jason Wyatt, a little older, thinner, a beard now, and crow's feet around his eyes. But still him. The arrest was clean. They found him sitting on a bench outside the fish market, carving letters into a scrap of wood. His hands shook as the cuffs went on. He didn't resist. Didn't ask why. He simply looked up at the overcast sky and whispered, "It took you long enough." Carla watched him through the one-way mirror in the Anchorage holding facility. Next morning, Wyatt sat still, wrists cuffed to the table, eyes fixed on his own reflection. A blank stare, like he was trying to memorize the man he used to be. Blake entered the room first. "Jason Wyatt," she said calmly. "You're under federal custody. You're being charged with the abduction and suspected murder of Emily Hart." No reaction. "You buried her," she added. "But she didn't stay buried." Wyatt blinked, slowly. Then he smiled, not smug, but hollow. "You think this is a confession story," he murmured. "It's a love story." Later, as Blake debriefed with local agents, Carla took a walk outside the station. It had started to snow. The cold bit her skin, but she didn't care. She opened her notebook and flipped to her final page of field notes. At the top, she wrote, "He thought this would end in silence." Then she drew a line underneath it and added one more sentence. "But she left a trail." That evening, Rachel Hart received a call. "We found her," Carla said. "Not all of her, but enough to bring her home." Rachel didn't speak at first. Then she whispered, "She was always trying to get home." In the woods near Kalen County, a forensic team sealed the last of the evidence bags. A final photo was taken. The grave was filled in. For the first time in a decade, the forest felt a little less haunted. Jason Wyatt sat in courtroom to beat like a man who believed he still had control. Hands folded, chin slightly raised. That same eerie calm that had followed him from Ashbrook to Alaska, as though he was still the one writing the script, and the rest of them were just side characters in his unraveling masterpiece. But the gallery was full now. Local press, Ashbrook families, former students, a mother in black who hadn't slept a full night in a decade, and Carla Ruiz, standing near the back, hands clasped behind her like a quiet guard. The judge entered. Wyatt did not rise. The trial began. The prosecution laid it all out. The manipulation, the grooming, the control, the notebook, the necklace, the grave, the blood in the trunk. Each piece fitting together like bones, reassembled after a long, dark sleep. Wyatt's defense. "A love story. Emily and I were misunderstood. We connected on a level no one else could see. She came to me, she trusted me. She said she couldn't breathe in that town." But even his voice wavered when the voicemail played. Even his lawyer flinched at the typed pages, the threats. The veiled confessions hidden in metaphors of storms and light. Still, Wyatt never admitted to murder, only to being present, only to loving her wrong, but not harming her. In the third week of trial, Rachel Hart took the stand. She looked older now, worn down in the bones, but not in the voice. She brought something with her, a folded paper, its edges frayed, its ink slightly faded. A letter Emily had written, but never sent. "Dear Mum, if I leave, please know it's not because I don't love you. It's because I don't know how to keep breathing in a place that's making me feel smaller every day. There's someone I thought understood me. But it's not love. It's fear dressed in the same coat. I don't want to disappear, but I'm scared. I already have. If you ever read this, I hope it means I found a way out. I hope it means I'm safe. I hope it means I get to come home someday. Love." Emily. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even Blake, seated beside Carla, swallowed hard. Wyatt shifted in his chair for the first time in hours. The walls cracked, and justice stepped through. The verdict was read a week later. Guilty of unlawful imprisonment. Guilty of corruption of a minor. Guilty of obstruction and disposal of evidence. But not guilty of murder. Because they hadn't found the full body. Because reasonable doubt still breathed. Rachel wept quietly, but not in rage, in something deeper. A strange release. Carla stood beside her in the hallway afterward. "It's not everything," she said, "but it's something." Rachel nodded, folding the letter again with slow, careful hands. He didn't bury her deep enough. Months passed. The forest was still under seasonal review. More bone fragments were found, enough to officially confirm what everyone already knew. Emily Hart had died in the woods, alone and not by accident. Carla returned to Ashbrook one last time in early spring. She stopped at the gas station, the one where Emily had smiled on the grainy footage, singing along to the radio. The pump was gone now, the place under renovation, but as she stood there, hand resting on her car roof, a familiar song played from inside the station, Everywhere by Fleetwood Mac. Carla smiled. The same song Emily had sung along to. She drove to Rachel's house. After that, Rachel met her at the door. "Didn't think you'd come back." Carla shrugged. "Felt like I had one more mile to walk." They sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, warm mugs between them. The air smelled like rain and lilac. Rachel reached into her pocket and handed Carla a small box. Inside, the locket, now polished, restored, repaired. "I'm not burying it," she said. "I'm keeping it, because she's not just in the ground, she's in every step forward." Carla closed her fingers around the metal. "The road back isn't straight." Rachel nodded. "But it's still a road." Later that night, Carla got back into her car. The tape was still in the deck. The case closed, the story told. But the echo of Emily's voice, her letters, her songs, her silences, would stay. Carla pressed play. The last song Emily ever sang filled the car once more, soft and steady. And for the first time in 10 years, the road ahead felt clear.